Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. The Book Report. Class, let's not forget your last big project for the year. I've been trying to forget it all week, Willie Teller said to himself. He tried to listen as Mrs. Dumas explained. You must all give an oral book report the last week of school, Mrs. Dumas said. You mean we have to get up in front, someone moaned, and talk? That's exactly correct, Mrs. Dumas said. I'll expect your report to be 2 pages long, and I'll expect you to be able to tell us about your book, not just read your paper. Willie moaned along with the rest of the class. I can't believe she's making us do the report up front, he said to Emily. Before she could agree, someone else spoke up. A book report will be hard for you, won't it, Willie? Charles said with a snicker. After all, you don't even like real books. Yeah, Brady chimed in, real books are too scary for you. Willie felt his face get red. Those two had been teasing him all year. I told you guys, I just don't like books about ghosts and stuff. Maybe you could do a book report about Mary and her little lamb, Charles suggested. That wouldn't be too scary, would it? Bring! The bell rang before Willie could answer, and he was glad to hear it. Charles and Brady had been teasing him about books for weeks, ever since Charles had offered to let Willie borrow one of his ghosts and horror stories books. No thanks, Willie had answered. I don't like those kinds of stories. Too scary for you, huh? Charles had said. Or do you think you're too good for books like this? Willie tried to explain. I just think there are lots of good stories to read without reading about bad things. But Charles had only laughed and told everyone that Willie was afraid. If I do a report on one of my books, everyone will say I'm a chicken, Willie thought. But if I do my book report from one of those scary books, then no one would laugh at me. Maybe that's what I should do. That Sabbath in the shoebox, the lesson was about Moses. When God told Moses to go and speak to Pharaoh, Mrs. Shue said, Moses didn't want to go. He was afraid. I didn't think Moses was ever afraid, Chris said. Mrs. Shue laughed. He was afraid that no one would believe him. He was afraid that Pharaoh and the people would laugh at him. Willie sat up straight. I know how that feels, he thought. He listened closely. God gave Moses a special rod and some special signs to show the people that he was from God, Mrs. Shue said. Then he gave Moses something even more valuable, and he gives the same thing to us. What is it? Willie asked out loud. A promise, Mrs. Shue said. A promise that he will help us speak and teach us what to say when we are trying to speak for him. That gave Willie a lot to think about. At lunch, he told his mom and dad all about the problem. Do you think giving a book report is speaking for God, like Moses did? You could use your report to tell your classmates that good stories that teach something about God's love are fun to read, Dad answered. If you do, then I think you are speaking for God. Willie smiled. Then I can pray and ask God to help me say the right words so they will like my book and not laugh. The next day, Willie chose one of his favorite books, Julius, the Perfectly Pesky Pet Parrot. Then he got busy on his computer. I don't like it, he told his mother after he printed it out. I didn't tell enough of the funny things Julius did. You can't include everything, Mom reminded him. Just be sure to tell what the book is about. You have a few more days. Keep working on it. The day of the book reports, Willie felt more worried than ever. He tried to go over what he was going to say on the way to school, but he kept thinking, what if everyone laughs at me? Willie had a hard time listening while others were giving their reports. He knew he was next when Charles gave his report. But the best part was when the ghost scared the bus driver so bad he crashed into a tree. Anyway, it's my favorite book. Thank you, Charles, Mrs. Dumas said. Our last report comes from Willie. Willie rolled slowly to the front. God, please help me say the right words, he prayed. Then he turned and faced the class. First, he held up the book. This report is about Julius the parrot. He explained how Mitch got the parrot and learned to take care of it. Julius could say a lot of words, and he could imitate people's voices. He would even imitate the phone ringing, then laugh when someone tried to answer it. Several kids laughed, and Willie could tell they liked the story. Hey, this isn't too bad, he thought. Everyone seems to be listening, and I'm not shaking. Thank you, God. He went on, "My favorite part is when Julius gets loose in church and flies up to a light fixture by the ceiling. He sings and interrupts whenever the pastor tries to speak. Then he flies down and snatches the pastor's glasses and bites them in 2 pieces." By now, everyone was laughing. Willie finished his story. Anyway, Mitch learns a lot about parrots and patience and about God's love. It's one of my favorite books. As he wheeled back to his desk, Mrs. Dumas said, "Thank you, Willie. Thank you all for your reports." Then the bell rang. Out of the corner of his eye, Willie saw Charles and Brady snicker and look at him. He took a deep breath and waited for the teasing to start. But someone stepped in front of them. "I liked your report, Willie," Emily said. "Can I borrow that Julius book sometime?" "Can I borrow it after her?" someone else called out. Willie's answer was a big smile.
The story you have heard today is from the Shoebox Kids Bible Stories, written by Jerry D. Thomas and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.